I hope you are ready to have your mind blown. I have the man, the myth, the legend. His friends call him the pencil, and we'll find out why in a moment. Mr. Simon Bowen, welcome to the Selling Show.
It's great to be here with you.
So Models Method is your
Sure.
empire. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we will use that as the launch pad for our conversation.
Sure. So the models method is really a process of using visual models to sell without ego, pressure, or overwhelm. And, you know, the basis behind that is when any of us are in the buyer role, we don't want to be pressured into the sale. We don't want to be overwhelmed with complex and complicated explanations. And we certainly don't want to buy the salesperson's ego. We actually live in our own story, and we want to have our own identity and ego inside our own story and know that that can win. And so I was, you know, I've always had a view that selling should be the most noble thing any business does, because everything starts with a sale. You know, a doctor's care plan only starts when they make the sale and get the customer to agree to the care plan, right? So the sale is the first step in the treatment process or the healing process. And so selling should be the most noble thing that we do, which means you shouldn't need to lean on false scarcity and urgency. You should be able to be completely transparent and let people see, you know, the deep and profound value. And so I went hunting for the process to help that, you know, and over time, and partly because of my background, originally in electronics and having to work with circuit diagrams and things, drawing visual models around what you do creates a level of transparency that customers are comfortable with. It puts the ego of the solution into the model. It doesn't have to attach it to you. So instead of you having to say, I'm the greatest in the world, I'm a thought leader, I'm number one, blah, 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 you can actually say, have a look at this model. You know, our design model, you know, has worked over and over again for, you know, X number of clients. And magical things happen when people see you drawing. And so we unpack this process. It's used in over 25 countries now and multiple languages, and it's done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales. And it's just is a very calming, easy way to sell that in many respects helps people get over imposter syndrome or the confidence challenges they have around selling and things like that. And it's just it's a lot of fun, you know. But what it does do is cause people to perhaps think deeper about what they sell than they ever have done before. And that might be the big missing secret, actually, for a lot of people in sales. They just haven't thought deeper than everybody else about the problem they solve and the solution they take to market. And I think that's, you know, that was not the first reason that we created the models method, the suite of visual sales models and the method behind it. But that's certainly been the biggest lesson for us. Almost every client and you've been a client, David, almost every client we've worked with has kind of come away going, okay, that's just changed everything about how I think about my business. Like it's just
Totally.
You know, and we've all got to think deeply about what we do if we're going to charge money for it, you know.
Absolutely. Well, I want to pick up on a couple of things that you shared there. Number one, I am a wildly enthusiastic client of the Models Method. And Simon, you're just absolutely brilliant. It was in our group that we were in, and I'm sure in every group that you work with, and certainly your private one-on-one clients, the thinking actually hurts. The thinking is actually painful. And this reminded me, because years and years ago, I took a stand-up comedy class. And if you're a fan of stand-up comedy, like, oh, I love that timing. He's so funny. She's so great. 80% of comedy is in the writing. Once you see it on stage, 20% is in the delivery. It's the exact same thing. When you see a masterful salesperson, especially one that's been trained in the Models Method, you're like, oh my God, it was so easy. It was so comfortable. It was so natural. The prospect was just following right along step by step. They were excited about what they were seeing. They were excited about what they were talking about. And look, there's triangles and circles and lines and curves and all these things. My friends, it's not about the triangles, circles, curves, 4-quadrant diagrams. It is about the incredible detail and the level of thinking, Simon, that you put in front of professional sellers like us, like me, and say, you need to think more deeply about what's the transformation your client really wants and how they're going to get from where they are to where they want to go. And I know that you've done this with the global Fortune 500 companies. You've done this with massive nonprofits. You've done this with governments. You've done this with all kinds of consultants and coaches and sellers. It is just transformational. It is literally transformational.
Well, and it is, and I love the comparison that you brought to comedy. You know, I studied stage comedy not to do it. I studied the structure of it because I wanted the choreography for the models, right?
Yeah.
And if a joke is, if the structure of a joke is the setup, punchline, and that punchline is about an instantaneous paradigm shift that emotionally rattles the audience. And in comedy, it should cause them to laugh. And in selling, that instantaneous paradigm shift is where the client gets a glimpse of value. A client can't possibly understand the transformational and timeless value you create until they've experienced it with you. And then usually they can't explain it to other people. And so in the sales process, you need to give them a glimpse of value. And when we walk through the product description, and so that's not creating value, that's the setup. But, you know, as you know, with the choreography, we're pretty big on punchlines and when you're going to deliver things, and timing really matters. And so, you know, people don't put enough thinking into how they're going to get in front of, you know, one of the worst things that ever plagued the sales world was the notion of the gift of the gab. The great salespeople were people who were just gifted with the ability to think on their feet and speak fast. And those people generally lean into a pressure-based style of selling. But if you really want to take the customer through a decision process that makes the decision to buy from you the most obvious thing to do, you need to think it through first. And so, you know, you're right. It is not about the models at all. You know, I spend 100% of my time helping people take their intuitive genius and turn it into organized genius, because people can't buy intuition. They have to buy structure, right?
Yes.
And I think so many people, David, I'm sure you have had this experience as well with your clients. And yeah, well, we've hung out a lot, so I know that you'll agree with this, but most people, the thing they sell is not the real thing. And they haven't done the thinking about the real thing. You know, I was having a conversation with a fractional CFO business that we've been working with, and I was asking them, what do you sell? And they go, well, fractional CFO service. And I go, no, that's the mechanics. So, you know, you've got mechanics, method, and magic. So that's the mechanics. But what do you sell? Well, we sell, you know, financial control, debt management, compliance. Well, that's the method of the stuff. It's still mechanics and method, but that's not really what you sell. What do you sell? And this is becoming frustrating for them because and you're right, the thinking hurts, right? Your value at price point increases the more your head has hurt in design.
I can vouch for that statement.
Yeah, right. But people need to think about that for a moment. Your value at price point increases proportional to the amount your head hurts during design. Because the thing that hurts your head is not intuitive genius. That comes naturally. The thing that hurts your head is organizing that genius. And that's the work, right? And so they're going, well, all right, then if that stuff isn't what we do as a fractional CFO, my response is everybody only buys two things. In fact, that, I think my email today is about that. Everybody only buys two things, and they just don't want to admit to either of them. The first thing that everybody buys is they want to win. Everybody wants a bigger car than the neighbor, and a bigger house than the neighbor, and a better business than their mate. A patient of a doctor wants to beat the disease. They want to win against the disease or the injury. Everybody wants to get a disproportionate advantage in the context of the problem they're trying to solve than most other people have. They want a better than average result. Everybody wants to win, right? They just don't want to admit it to anyone, because it would be, in today's world, it would be, you don't want to talk about winning. The second thing everybody wants is they want to be protected. They want to be safe, and they want someone or something to make them safe. And if we could hold on to those two things, every time we think our way through a product, aspiration and risk reversal, green line, red line, and we shape our conversations around that, everything changes. So I'm saying to this fractional CFO service, you only do those two things. What are they? In your world, in your language, what would that be, right? And they were still struggling. I said, so here's the deal. I want you to say to the client, as a CFO service, we only do two things for you. We help you win disproportionately in your marketplace, and we stop you from making stupid mistakes. And then see if they buy from you, because they will. Because
right.
Every business owner wants to win disproportionately in the marketplace, and they don't want to mess it up.
And even in plain vernacular, what was going through my mind is we help you make a lot more money, and we keep you out of prison.
Yeah, great. Same thing, right? That's product is never the product. It's always the thing underneath it, right? And
yeah,
that you can imagine CFOs not wanting to say that. We can't guarantee to keep them out of prison. What if they, I get that, but you can show the pathway that will keep them out of prison, but, and so, you're working with people all the time as well. I'm more convinced now than I ever have been. And, we need to talk about what 2023 is going to bring for people.
Yes.
But I'm more convinced now than I've ever been that the world of selling today, replace pressure and false scarcity and urgency with deep and profound insight around what you really do. Because in 2023, people aren't going to buy the bonuses and everything else. People are going to buy profound value. When the world gets rocky, people want a core of stability. They don't want to buy the stacked value bonuses and things like that. They want, is this going to make me safe? And is it going to give me the result I want?
Yes.
And you better have your game lined up around that. Otherwise, selling is going to become real hard. If it is lined up around that, you're probably going to do pretty well in a market where a lot of other people are going to fall away. It's going to be interesting.
Well, we were talking about that right before we turned on the microphones, about all of this talk about recession and recession-proof your business, and the recession's coming. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. And you and I were both agreeing that some companies and some firms will do very, very well. Some companies and some firms might do the same. And some companies and some firms are really going to suffer. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in sort of like the high end, low end, counter-cyclical nature of certain businesses, including yours and mine.
Yeah. So if I may, I'm just going to share a screen and I'm going to draw a bit. So firstly, what we're actually seeing just in terms of in terms of the market is, at the lower end of pricing, people are more nervous and they're wanting more guarantee, if you like, that this will work. At the high end of pricing, the sales have never been easier at the very high price point. And that's because those people at the very high price point, we're a business to business company. Those people are clear about what they want and the value they need to get to make that happen. And they understand that the counterintuitive nature of challenging economic times is to invest more into the things that drive your business, and sales happens to be one of them, right? So where everyone's cutting costs, the A players increase their investment in the thing that will differentiate them in the marketplace. And in a challenging economic climate, the thing that differentiates you in your marketplace is how you show up, how you market, and how you sell. Wealthy people will still buy Rolls Royces in a depressed economic marketplace. Those businesses don't miss a beat, and so, when we say, oh, it's going to be a tough 2023, that is just not true for everybody, right? And so at the start of the pandemic in February of 2020, I did a social media post and I used the futures model, and I said it's February 2020. But, let's move forward and say it's October 2022 right now. So in February 2020, the choreography of this was all about the pandemic. I'm going to draw the exact same model and just talk about the economic climate, right? It's October 2022. And people say that, 2023 is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. The future is unstable and everything else. But there are actually three things that I can guarantee people, because we can actually predict the future. And the first thing that I can guarantee is that in 2 or 3 years' time, let's make it 3 years' time, it's going to be October 2026. No, 2025, do my math.
Yeah.
And we will all be 3 years down the track. And each of us will have taken one of 3 journeys at that point in time. Now, at some point, and I'm not sure when that is, none of us know when that is, but at some point, we will cross this thing that I call the survival line. Meaning we'll be on the other side of that line and everyone will have gotten through the situation and they've gone, well, that's behind us. Let's move forward, right? Until the next thing comes along. Now, the point is, we don't know when that is. We don't know when that line will occur, but it will occur. What we know with some certainty, though, is that some businesses will have ended up on the red line, and they may have hit crisis or died before they even get to the survival line. And that happens when people drift through the climate, the economic environment.
Yeah.
You will not be able to sell in 2023 with the same messaging that you sold with in 2022 or 2021, right?
Amen.
But in 2022, we were coming out of the pandemic and everything. People were getting a bit more enthusiastic, but the same messaging won't get you there.
Yeah.
So if you just drift, your business is going to die. And so this is almost like the death line. We also know that there'll be a bunch of businesses that will be on this survival line. And they're going to hibernate. They're going to bunker down, fill their cheeks with, with nuts and try and survive the winter. Yeah. And they'll ride these emotional and economic highs and lows all the way through. And they'll be 3 years down the track and no further ahead, which means
exactly where they are today.
Correct. Which is actually a downward position.
Right.
So that's the survival line. The red line is the death line, and the green line is the survival line.
And really, the yellow line, the survival line, is stagnation, right?
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. It's because you're actually going backwards, and even if you're going backwards for only one reason, and that reason is that some people went forward and they thrived. Now you've gone backwards if your nearest competitor was up here.
Yes.
If you've stagnated and just survived, but your nearest competitors jumped onto the green line, then you're going backwards, right?
Yeah.
You can go backwards because you make some poor decisions and you actually have a poorer result inside your business, or your business could stay at the same level, but you go backwards because the rest of the market passed you.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this on this green line, there may well be a period of time where people don't have the same, level of the same sort of steepness of curve in terms of results, but what they will build is foundation during this period of time. So the first thing I can promise people is in 3 years' time, it will be October 2025. The second thing I can promise people is that at some point we will cross a survival line. And usually, my older brother, who's a mergers and acquisition lawyer, gave me this kind of piece of insight. He said, you cross the survival line when greed outstrips fear. That's a wonderful insight. You cross the survival line when people's desire to actually move forward again, get some wins, outstrips fear. And so,
but there must be a noble version of greed also.
I'm sure
that
there is.
We
right?
can embrace.
The desire to contribute outstrips
there
the fear.
You go.
Yeah. So
the desire to contribute outstrips
correct.
Your fear.
Yeah. And the third thing that I can promise people is that the businesses that are positioned on this green line when we cross the survival line will have a disproportionate acceleration away from the rest of the market.
Yeah.
Because what will be happening during this foundation period, there'll be market share up for grabs. There'll be great team members.
Oh, yes.
Up for grabs. There'll even be businesses, stressed businesses, up for grabs. And the people on the green line will be positioning themselves to be able to take advantage of all of those things as we cross the survival line. And so how do they build this foundation? Well, they understand that the key is to win at sales. The number one job for everybody in 2023 is make sure you win at sales. And I don't mean win in terms of convert every sale. I mean win as in be better at it than the rest of the marketplace. And, I can guarantee that picture. People say you can't predict the future, but you actually can. It's 3 lines and a survival line. I can guarantee that picture. What I can't guarantee is the timing, whether it's 3 years, 12 months, 5 years, but I can guarantee the picture. And, once you kind of lock in on the fact that the future is actually way more predictable than people think, your stress levels about stuff changes. You just need to figure out what's the key to unpack to be on that green line. So our number one job, yours, mine's, every other business owner's job, in order to protect the people that are a part of your economic community. So every business has around it an economic community, right? And the leaders of those businesses are responsible for that economic community. I remember sitting with a manager of a mine. I've done a lot of work in the mining industry. And, the price of iron ore dropped from $180 a ton to $52 a ton. And cost of production is about $56 a ton. And their burn rate was $40 million a month. So they're burning $40 million cash a month. The company had $500 million in the bank and a market capitalization of about $1 billion. And at a burn rate of $40 million a month, with $500 million in the bank, you've got about 11 months of operation whilst you're losing money before you're out of business. And so what mining company will typically do at that moment is put the mine on care and maintenance and reduce the workforce from 2,000 down to about 25, who just kind of grease the bearings and lubricate the parts and stop steel from rusting. And they don't produce, and they keep all the money in the bank, protect shareholder value, and then wait for the price to come back, and then they just crank the mine back up again. And I was having a conversation with him. He was most uncomfortable about this because, you know, it's 2,000 people. And I said, well, so let me help stress you out even further. And let's think through the size of the economic community you're responsible for as the mine manager. And we just worked out how many people were directly impacted by this decision that he was making. So it's every mine worker plus their families. It's every contracting company, numbers of whom would probably go broke when the mine went under care and maintenance, and their employees and families, the shareholders of those contracting companies. And without blinking, we were at 10,000 people. And I said, so it's a pretty big decision. Can you get the cost of production below $52 a tonne? Because the long-term median cost of production used to always be $38 a tonne. But when you're selling at $180 a tonne, you get lazy. And you just build fat into the business.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a blunt instrument. Let's close the mine, put on care and maintenance, as opposed to let's really examine our spend lines and find our way back to $38 a tonne. And even if we break even until the price comes back and we're not burning cash at $40 million a month, or if we only burn cash at $5 million a month, every board I know will tell you to keep going, right? It changes the mathematical equation. You got 10,000 people hanging on a bit of math. How about you build some spreadsheets, which he did, and he ended up not closing the mine. Now, when the market turned, they were first into the market with product into China, who were just sucking up huge volumes of iron ore. And they made it, you know, they passed the survival line. That what they did was they built the foundation, which is let's get back to the long-term median price of $38 a tonne production, which is what we should all be at, and we'll survive. When we cross the survival line, we'll accelerate it, which they did. Other mines had to get it out of mothballs, you know, crank it up again, ramp up production, find staff. You got to find 2,000 people who can work on a mine site, who are happy to live with fly in, fly out kind of work conditions and stuff. They were ready to go. You know, we can start shipping 60,000 tonne of iron ore a month immediately, right? So, we can guarantee that future. And I think, you know, it's worthy of a little conversation about what selling might look like in 2023, because it is going to be the differentiating factor for so many businesses, you know.
Well, the mining story really undermines a little bit of a twist in what you just said, Simon, which is this is not about predicting the future. It's about predicting your future, right?
Yeah,
and so when that mine manager went and did the spreadsheets and realized, hey, we have an ecosystem of 10,000 humans that this hinges on, we're choosing a different future. And we're going to do the hard work and we're going to do the math and we're going to cross that survival line. So you're right. We can't predict the future macro outside of our control, but we do get to predict the future that we are in control of.
Yeah, I love that distinction, David. And it kind of brings up another conversation about sales specifically, right? Which is the seductive world that everyone's bought into, which is inbound sales, right? It's the click mentality. Put a website up, run ads to Facebook and Google, post to social media, and produce content, which is all valid, but do all of that sort of stuff so that the customer takes an action and reaches out to you. Yeah. Now that's inbound selling because the customer's taking the action. All of that marketing is useful and valid if for only one reason. Now, it can be valid. It's valid in certain markets, certain styles of product and industry. But all of that is valid if for only one reason. And that is when someone finds out when someone finds out you exist and you do a certain thing, the first thing they're going to do is Google your name. And then what's going to come up is your LinkedIn profile and your Facebook profile, and then maybe your website and any podcast you've been on and everything else. And when they come across your LinkedIn profile and they go to the recommendations at the bottom, do you get 10 recommendations in a burst every 6 months? Or was your last recommendation 5 years ago? Or do you get 3 to 5 recommendations month in, month out, which says consistency, right? What kind of things do you write about on Facebook? And when you do, does anyone comment on it? And what sort of comments do you get? And what do they say about you, the people that actually know you? When they come to your website, is it useful to them? You know, does it actually give them something to play with and apply? And so there's absolutely value in content marketing and things like that, because they're going to Google you. But if you're in a complex product or service, you sell, you know, accounting, engineering, advisory, health services, people, you know, coaching and stuff like that.
Cybersecurity consulting.
Yeah, right. Cybersecurity, right? A company is not Googling cybersecurity experts. They're going to use someone that someone's told them to go and use, right? And then they'll Google you. They'll Google you, right? And so, you know, what is your brand out there? And the problem with, we were chatting about this before we kind of hit the record button. The problem, you know, with, you know, run ads or run your social media posts, run people to a webinar, give them an offer at the end, get them to opt in and book a call. That's all inbound, because you're asking them to take the action. And that's fine if you've already got a personal brand that will run people to your webinar. But if you don't have enough of a brand out there, you're going to have 10 people show up. And it's really hard to make that work. And is it actually necessary? And I was recently at the Outbound conference in Atlanta. And, you know, the difference in selling is inbound. You're asking the customer to take an action. Outbound, the salesperson drives all the action. So it's old fashioned. It's called prospecting. And people used to hate prospecting, but it's the most controllable form of selling there is.
Wow.
You know, if you need 30 to 50 clients a year to make your consulting business work, or 100 clients a year, one of the most potent things you could do is build your own micro niche. What's that? Let's say you need 100 clients a year. Identify 500 clients you'd love to work with, actual clients, companies, right? Or individuals. And this is different to a retail style market, right? I'm probably talking more business to business here, or business to, yeah. But get a list of 500 and market directly to them. It's a much higher payoff strategy, and you are completely in control of that. Facebook can't cancel your ad account. Google can't cancel your ad account. Google aren't going to swamp your ad account with their new Performance Max solution, which is their kind of AI driven, we build your funnel for you. You just give us your images and your ad content, and then we build your funnel. It's a black box approach. And, you know, basically you just spend more money with them. But how can they afford to have an ordinary ad account outperforming their own Performance Max? I just want people to think about that for a moment. Yeah. So who's controlling your marketing? You must control your own marketing, your own sales. Your micro niche is this list of 500 clients, prospective clients you want to market to, and you can find out everything. The key to this is intel.
Yes.
You can find out everything you want to know about somebody in today's world, right? LinkedIn is a treasure trove. I've got the ability to get everybody's email address that I want without actually contacting their company and ringing up and saying, do you have the email address? You know, like we're kind of having a challenge with a particular airline at the moment. For 4 months and 14 people, we've been trying to finalize some redemption flights on points, right? And 14 times we ring up and the person goes, well, I should start another booking. And the email addresses of the executives of this company, the vice president for customer service, the vice president for the customer experience, the CEO, are not available on the website. So I used my Intel tools and went and found their email addresses, all of them. I've got 3 emails for each of them. So in those 3, somewhere I've got their public email, but also their direct private email. And my next call with the next agent, because I say to the agents when we were talking on the phone, can you give me the email address of your supervisor or the department that I can escalate this to? there's only one phone number for this whole company and you can't email anyone. And they go, we're not allowed to give that information out. It's policy. On my next call, I'm going to say, here are the email addresses of the Senior Vice President for Customer Service and the Senior Vice President for Customer Experience. And my next step is to email them if we don't resolve this on this call today. And we'll see what happens, right? But intel is everything.
Totally.
And that's I'm applying an outbound strategy to this issue. So outbound, what's outbound? You pick up the phone and call people. HubSpot's most recent sales data, 65% of C-suite executives would prefer to receive a phone call than an email. That's a really important number.
Wow.
Exactly.
A post-pandemic phone call.
Yes, go figure, right? Rather than an email.
How interesting.
Yep.
We always talk about the 3 R's, by the way. I'm loving this because I'm preaching this and teaching this until I'm blue in the face. Research, relevance, relationship.
Correct.
If you have the research, and I love this conversation that you're sharing right now, Simon, you have the relevant, you're going to show up on their doorstep, not like a cold calling spammer, but as somebody with a relevant resource or a solution to a problem that you know they have, that you've read about, seen, heard, an industry trend, a new compliance or regulatory issue, a new market opportunity, whatever it is. And when you show up on their doorstep with the research and the relevance, that's the beginning of a relationship. And the beginning of a relationship is also the beginning of a sale.
Absolutely right. And, you know, the challenge is that people are swamped by email and everything else. And also we know that in the interest of data privacy, Apple have decided they're going to open every bit of email that goes through Apple's servers in Cupertino. Just process that for a moment. What they're actually saying is they're going to prevent marketing mail systems from tracking where the email was opened by opening it instantly at Cupertino and then closing it supposedly and sending it on. Now, people might have noticed when they, when they updated their iPhones probably about 8 months ago, a pop-up came up that said Apple's implemented new privacy policies to protect our users, and this will affect your email and browsing. And if you're happy for that, click yes. Part of what you agreed to there was that any email that comes to you through Apple's servers, they will open.
So this is regardless, this could be Gmail or Outlook or anything, but it comes to your iPhone, that counts?
Yeah.
Wow.
So about 50% of the world's email goes through an Apple server somehow. And about 58% of the world's email goes through a Google server somehow. Because it's either coming from Gmail or going to a Gmail account. It's either going to an iPhone or coming from an iPhone or an iPad. And Google are doing the same thing. Google read every email. But that also makes email deliverability harder and harder. Now, Microsoft Outlook just will not deliver certain email that goes into certain folders on Gmail. So email is not as reliable as it once was.
Yeah.
And people might have noticed more and more clients going, I didn't get that email from you, Yeah. So it's the old fashioned pick up a phone and have a conversation. And you don't pick up the phone and say, hey, David, I'm just Simon Bowen from the Models Method. I'm just reaching out to have a chat with you about blah, blah, blah. And we've got a great offer. I'd love it if you could give me a call back on blah, 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 blah. You never, on outbound selling, you don't ask the customer to take an action. Hi, David, Simon Bowen from Models Method. We've got a radically new way of selling that really can position you in the marketplace, where we teach people to draw visual models to sell. And it would absolutely work really, really well for complex, contentious products or services. I'm going to call back in 2 or 3 days just to see if I catch you. Now, you do that 3 or 4 times. The thing is, they're hearing your name. This is just kind of, they're going to Google you. And that's why you want your LinkedIn profile to be switched on and things like that. But you're not asking them to make an outreach to you, right?
Yeah.
And I might then also send them something in the mail, that old-fashioned physical mailbox that is empty these days.
You
Right?
mean something like this?
Yes, something like that.
An actual card with a stamp?
Yes, or goodness forbid, something that's lumpy. You know,
Ooh.
people can't stand it. If you mark something private and confidential and it's got lumpy stuff in there, the EA or the PA won't open that.
Mm-hmm.
Although companies might, want to scan it
Right.
to make sure there's nothing dangerous in there. But, I might send them a little video of me. I might, drop 2 or 3 phone calls. This is to this list of 500 that we've identified.
Yes.
Who we want to work with, and we found out everything we can about them. And then I might drop them, once I've done that, I might send a video saying,
and the video email, Simon, that goes through like a Loom or a BombBomb?
Well, Loom, Vimeo, whatever.
Right.
And these days, it's never been easier to record a video.
For sure.
I might do mine on my glass board because it's interesting, but I could also put it on an old-fashioned thumb drive and send that in the mail, right?
Yeah.
Many number of ways I could send it to them, but I might send them a video saying, hey, David, I've called you a couple of times and I don't want to kind of interrupt your day, but principally what I'm talking about is where companies like yours in the advisory space are sitting in the marketplace on a simple view of a pyramid. Some companies are in the red zone and they're really going to face crisis in how they sell. Most are in this amber zone where they're really just in the market. They're average. It's same. A few are in this light green zone where they're better than most. And I would be drawing this. I wouldn't have this on PowerPoint or anything.
Yes.
And then a very small number, we think less than 2% are at the top of this pyramid, where they're really the champions of their industry. They stand out. They're winning disproportionately. And the truth is that you're either below that midpoint or above the midpoint. And as I said, less than 2% are at the top of this pyramid. I'd love to have a conversation about what we do to put the companies that we work with in that upper 2%.
Yes.
If that's of any interest to you.
This is so good for so many reasons. And so one thing, number one, the finite list of 500, which over the course of the year, Simon, like you said, let's say you need 50. So your average ticket is $20,000. You get 50 yeses. That's $1 million consultancy. The second thing I love about this is most C-suite leaders have an innate affinity for sales. They will respect you because this guy really wants to talk to me. This guy's going above and beyond. This guy's putting in some effort. I'm going to take the call.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great insight that most C-suite executives have an affinity for sales. Even if they've never sold, they get how important it is, right? The other thing is that you might not need to go after the C-suite.
Sure.
Everyone wants to get to the C-suite. They're often not the people making the decision on the solution.
In a larger company, absolutely not.
They're the people that know there's a problem.
Yeah.
But every company, every C-suite executive has lead scouts. And you need to know who they are. That's why research, intel is so important, right? Who are the lead scouts? Because you can get to them a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
So you might have a company on your list of 500, but you might have 15 people in that company on your marketing list, right?
Yes.
The other thing about this is, with that model, I haven't sold them my thing. I've just showed them the problem.
Yes.
And you know, that's the advantage. So I'm just stepping through the problem there.
Yeah.
And what am I really tapping into, right? People want to win.
Yes. And there's also a
It-
curiosity factor when you
Correct.
say that only the top 2% are the real champions. The first thing in that person's mind is, well, is there any chance that I'm in that top 2%? What's Simon's definition of the top 2%? Because I'll tell you what, and this is a common misconception with sales, a lot of folks have imposter syndrome and they say, well, the best companies or the best CEOs or the best prospects, they will never hire me. The best prospects are probably the first to hire you because they've got a total commitment to get ahead, stay ahead, and move ahead faster because they know the competition is nipping at their heels. So you'll probably make more sales in that top 2% than you will at level 2 and 3 and 4.
Of course. The other thing that's happening with this is they know that they're average. Average means most people are in there.
Yes.
And every business owner knows that there are some people in their business that are average.
Yeah.
And so they're self-selecting. They're saying, we're probably in the amber, but I want to be in that top 2%. What does that look like? Right. So this is a curiosity factor. And I would draw it because drawing just works. Drawing is analog and humans are analog.
Yes.
And click-based inbound selling is digital, and humans relate to an analog medium more. So, you know, in the outbound approach, you're taking all the action and doing the work to earn the sale.
Yes.
I have a process that I've used for 3 decades now to sell to large companies, and you know, this is usually a multi-$100,000 sale. And so I end up getting a meeting with the lead scout. I draw a bunch of stuff. The lead scout goes, oh, that's fantastic. You know, I need to kind of communicate this back to a few people in the organization. I still want to take the action. So I say, I tell you what, I would normally offer a complimentary project planning session once we start the project. But how about I do that before you even have to make the decision? And I'll come in and run a 3-hour complimentary project planning session with you and any other key decision makers. We'll produce a Gantt chart for the project, and whether we work together or not, this is the key phrase, whether we work together or not, you will have a plan that you can follow. And I will rerun all of these models for you in that meeting. And they go, would you? And I go, yeah, absolutely. It's my responsibility to be really clear about what it is that you want. That'd be great. You just need to get the people in the room. Fabulous. Can I take a copy of those models with you? And I go, and I used to carry a sketch pad. Now it's an iPad. So now I say, I'll email them to you, but I used to tear them out. I'd say, you take the originals, I'll take photos, right? Yeah. And off they go. And I get my meeting, and that meeting runs for 3 hours. It's highly choreographed. And at a certain point, I go to the whiteboard and I start building a Gantt chart, a timeline for the project. And I know that they've bought the key buying signal is they say, well, what does your diary look like during that window of time? And to test how serious they are, I'd say, well, for it to fit into my diary, we'd have to push it out 1 month. I couldn't start on that. I'd have to start a month later. And they go, well, let's see what that looks like at the end of the project. Yeah. If that suits us. And usually they go, yeah, no, but that would still work for us. And I go, great. So what I'll do is I'll prepare an estimate of my fees against that project for you. Now I'm not sending them a proposal. I'm sending them a summary of their project planning session. Yeah. With my fees attached. And I've got a deeper knowledge of their problem than anybody else that they've spoken to. And I've put my models against them, which is the solution to the problem. And I've had them in the room for 3 hours, and it's called product in action. They've seen me working. Yeah. And in those 3 hours, I will have taken them deeper into the thinking than they had even been themselves. And I would have highlighted stuff they didn't anticipate or even expect to come across. But I've done this a lot. And they're already thinking that's the guy, right? And they've bought me because they're shifting their timeline and they don't have the fee yet. And I used to explain this to people, David, as a selling strategy because it's outbound sales. And then people would say to me, what, you give them 3 hours for free? I'm winning a $200,000 or $300,000 contract here. I figure I can give them 3 hours. It's worth a little bit of work, folks. You know, like the idea of, I mean, I have so many conversations with people go, what I want to do is I want to be able to have a 30-minute sales call. What's the price point? How much do you want to sell on that 30-minute sales call? $40,000, $60,000. Great. Get real. Would you make a $60,000 decision on a 30-minute conversation? For goodness sakes, people.
Yeah.
Now, in outbound selling, patience is the superpower.
I'll say.
We have become a very impatient sales world. And because we're pushing false scarcity and urgency onto the customer, and they must push back.
Yes.
But so long as you have enough clients, as long as you have enough conversations in your pipeline, the time to sale for an individual client doesn't matter. Let me repeat that again. If you've got enough prospects, enough conversations in your pipeline, if you know your average time to sale is 2 months from first contact to they buy from you, and you have your pipeline's full, your sales will be predictable and reliable.
Yeah.
And you can be patient. But if your average time, but if you don't have a full pipeline, you've got to win every deal.
Right.
And that impatience will push more people away than it will bring them to you.
For sure.
You know, and so I win more business with clients by saying, you probably shouldn't make this decision right now. I would have drawn them the futures model already, by the way.
Right, right.
But then I'm also saying to them, maybe you shouldn't make this decision right now. You might not be ready. You might, I'd ask everyone to hear this language. Remember that futures model. You might not be ready for the green line. Now that is like, because everyone wants to win. That's like a red rag to a bull. Of course I'm ready for the green line. I want to start right now. Are you sure? Now this whole dynamic has shifted. Outbound selling, I think, you know, it's old-fashioned sales. You know, we used to have this concept of territory management. A salesperson had a geographical territory or a portfolio of clients or an industry niche or something, and you worked the territory. And what we're wanting is the digital world to do the work. And that's, and it does do amazing things, but I think we're giving up some of the skills that carries you through a tougher economic period. But in 2023, some companies are going to do really, really well, and a whole bunch are going to fall away.
Yeah.
And you just got to decide which one of those you're going to be.
Well, you and I work so hard at it in a good way, in a smart way, that I've come to a place where lazy sellers make me nuts. Nothing makes me angrier or more upset than a lazy seller.
It's
so
well,
we could talk literally for hours, and we will, just not now. So I want to ask you two final questions. The final question is, how can people connect with more Simon Bowen genius? But even before we get to that question, if folks were to take one overarching concept about selling and the state of sales in 2023, visual models, inbound versus outbound, all these amazing things we talked about, what would you like that key takeaway to be?
Gee, that's a great question, David. And there's so many things running through my head at the moment. But I think I'm going to say, and I'm just going to, I also want to grab something here for you. I want to give people a bit of a gift. I'll actually grab that link and you can add it in, but I'll give people a gift.
We'll put it in the show notes. Perfect.
Yeah, but gee, that's a great question. And I could talk about, you know, you've got to show people your value rather than just tell it to them.
Yeah.
We could talk a lot about, you know, gather great intel and everything else.
How about don't be lazy?
It's fascinating because the thought that immediately popped into my head was do the work.
Yes, even better.
Earn the sale, right? In 2023, don't look for someone to save you. Work your way through 2023. You'll be fine. Do the work. Now, do the work means do intelligent work.
Yes.
You know, you're right. You and I mean, we know each other well. We're a bit obsessed with this whole thing called marketing and sales, right? And so we're always trying to think about a better way of doing something, but we work hard at this, right?
Yeah.
Do the work. Work your way through 2023. Don't look to be saved through 2023. Those people will fall away. The people that do the work will shine. And your customer has a right to expect you to do the work in the sale, because how you sell is how you're going to deliver.
Yes.
And their experience of you, you know, the Challenger sales folks, that, you know, that and now Challenger sale, the next iteration of that is sense making. But one of the things that they identified in one of their research pieces is 53% of customer loyalty is formed whilst they're buying from you.
How about that?
How about that?
The buying process is part of your brand.
Well, it's 53%
Yeah.
of the loyalty that your brand builds, right? It's the greater part of your brand. How about that? It's just it's quite fascinating, right? So do the work. Actually work your way through 2023. Don't look to be rescued through 2023. I think it's a fabulous question. No one's asked me that like that, David. I think that's a great question. And so to help people with that, they can go to our website, modelsmethod.com, and at some point in the next few weeks, it will be switching over to a brand new website. So we're in that kind of flux period where we're not doing any work on the current site, and everyone's been through that, right?
Sure.
But they can go to modelsmethod.com. There's a lot of resources there. You know, find me on LinkedIn and follow me on LinkedIn. I write a newsletter every fortnight, and, you know, I post 3 times a week on LinkedIn. But also I'll give folks a link to a model that they can use. It's using a bell curve to completely reposition your price and take cheap off the table for the customer, so that so it's almost becomes embarrassing for them to say, can you do it at a cheaper price?
Yes.
And so it's using the bell curve with some very simple choreography, and it's a little video based training that they can use to learn how to use the bell curve to completely annihilate cheap as an option. And you do it before you start the sale. Interesting. You talk about price right up front to take cheap off the table, and you can textualize the rest of the conversation. So I'll give you the link for that, and I'd love people to kind of have that as a tool that they can start playing with straight away.
Excellent. I know it well, and I love it, and I know that folks listening, you will love it too. But yes, so modelsmethod.com.
Yeah.
Your LinkedIn is also a huge resource. You post so much value and so much helpful information there. But even on your website, you've got the videos, you've got something like 30 pages of blogs, and each one is a gem. And I just highly, highly recommend. All of these links are going to be in the show notes directly below this episode at thesellingshow.com. So check out all of Simon's resources and the special gift. Simon, you are a gift. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
My pleasure. Great fun hanging out with you as always.